30 years of the dead man, countless great matches. Let's talk about some of them. I'm Shawn with Undertaker's 30 Best Matches Part 1. These are all in my personal opinion, of course, because everybody's going to have a different list, and it's impossible to talk about every single good, great, iconic, legendary match that Undertaker has had in his career. And yes, he's had some bad ones. You're going to have that in any long-running career, but I could have easily made this a top 50. There were a whole lot to choose from. Pay-per-view matches, TV matches, and fought through a whole bunch of injuries and a whole bunch of stuff to have a lot of great runs in his career. Now, yes, the last number of years of his career have not been kind to him, and his performance has diminished because Father Time waits for nobody. And I do want to say I stand by every single thing I said about Undertaker in the Last Ride reviews I did and other reviews. But that being said, focusing solely on the in-ring career of Undertaker, let's talk about this, but please let me know what you guys have to say in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. So we go with number 30 versus Hulk Hogan at Survivor Series 1991. Hulkamania's dead, Monsoon. He won the WWF Championship 1 year into his career, debuting at Survivor Series the year before. And yes, with help from Ric Flair and, a whole bunch of shenanigans, Undertaker did beat Hulk Hogan, though, and won the championship and then lost it a little bit later at Tuesday in Texas. Now, I will say this. It's not really a great match from an in-ring performance perspective, but just looking at the fact that Undertaker beating Hogan was such a monumental deal. Not a lot of people got to beat Hogan by that point. It was really great, and him holding the championship after only being around for a year was a big goddamn deal. And it'd be a number of years, unfortunately, before he would hold the championship again. And then we get to number 29 versus Kane at Unforgiven 1998, the Inferno match. The follow-up to their Mania 14 clash that I will talk about later in this countdown. Maybe a bit higher. Maybe it'll be the next one. No, it'll be a little bit higher. But it's a big goddamn deal. And man, this one was a little bit dangerous with all the fire and sucking up the oxygen and, the dangerous stuff that they did. And you can't really do a safe Inferno match if you really try. Well, except if you're Kane versus Bray Wyatt at SummerSlam 2013. But that's another story for another day. That match sucked. This was a big deal because they would continue to have a really good feud, off and on. They would team up, then they'd break up, then they'd have, more matches like at SummerSlam 2000. They'd have good matches, and then they'd have matches like SummerSlam 2000, like I mentioned. They didn't really hit the same peak because how can you really, justify the long-term build and then do matches like this and then muddy the waters? But this is when the feud still had some legs to it, some really strong legs. And they did a big goddamn production here. And this was really good shit. And Kane getting set on fire. It was really, really cool. Undertaker just, being vulnerable, but still finding a way to beat his brother. It was a really cool match, despite being so goddamn hot around the ring. Number 28, the Elimination Chamber match at No Way Out 2008. He beat everybody, including the Great Khali and Big Daddy B. And, among others, but, two of those guys in a chamber match. That shows you how, the talent depth was a little bit shallow for this. But he beat everybody and went on to face Edge at Mania 24 for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event. Really, really big, really big match there. But this showed Undertaker kind of at his peak, even as injuries were catching up to him. He was able to beat the shit out of a lot of the competitors and win the damn thing, and it was really goddamn cool to see. I was going to put the one where he got, the pyro guy accidentally set Undertaker on fire at Elimination Chamber 2010, but that one, while good, I wanted to put one where he actually won, and I feel this one just ekes that out, even though he is legit tough for, pouring water on himself, having the burns, and being upset at the pyro guy, which I would have been too. I wouldn't want to be set on fire. I can't imagine too many people would. But this was a really good match, and a really good chamber match just before the PG era really fucking took over. And then we get to number 27 versus Batista at Backlash 2007. Last man standing match. This was unfortunately marred a bit by the finish because it was a draw. Neither guy could get back to their feet, but it was kind of a cool finish in the sense that Undertaker was unfortunately going to be dealing with an injury and was going to be, was going to have a steel cage match, beat Batista, and then was going to lose the championship on a cashing in Edge after Edge beat Mr. Kennedy for the Money in the Bank briefcase just a bit before. But it wasn't as good as their Mania 23 clash, but they had a really good feud. I think Undertaker got a lot out of Batista, and Batista rose to the occasion and did really good shit facing Undertaker here, and they had a long-running feud, even with the injury, even after that May cage match. and Undertaker was off like till I think Unforgiven 2007. They beat Mark Henry. They reignited their feud in the fall, and this was really, really good. It was one of the better last man standing matches that they would do, not just at a Backlash event, but in the 2000s. These guys, you wouldn't know how well they would work, chemistry wise, and I was even unsure how they would work at Mania 23. And once I saw how well they worked there and how they should have been much higher on the card, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, this was a great, follow up to that great match. And even with the dodgy finish and the draw, and the stage fall and all that stuff and all that bullshit, it was still a big time clash. And then we get to number 26, the Royal Rumble 2008. After Shawn and Undertaker had been the final two in the previous Royal Rumble, they started out this one. And while, yes, Undertaker and Shawn, they would eliminate a couple people, and then it would get to where a bunch of people were filling the goddamn ring, and then they had another really cool stare down moment. This was just below that because it's like, okay, they had that great clash in 07, and they had this, and it was nice to see, and they got to take people out and then just get to where they were taking each other out. And there was no doubt they were going to reignite this feud and keep it kind of simmering and then go with it sometime later. And boy, did they ever the next year. This was, pretty good. And they lasted into the 20s. So they did pretty damn well. They lasted about 35 minutes, something like that, 35 minutes. Good stuff by, a couple guys that were basically part-timers by that point. Number 25, Hell in a Cell, Armageddon 2000. Yeah, basically, I'm pretty much putting this up there because Undertaker was the American Badass here at this point, which is a bit controversial. I actually like the American Badass Undertaker. Turns out it was a lot closer to Undertaker's real life feelings, but I digress. This was, yes, Undertaker didn't get to do as much as he would in like singles Hell in a Cell matches, but my God, that throw that he did, throwing Rikishi into the sawdust truck and a few other things he did. That's why I'm going to have to put this on there, because it showed just how evil Undertaker could still be despite being a biker. Not being the Lord of Darkness, but being the American Badass. He showed why he was still a man to be reckoned with at this point. And check out my retro review of that if you want to hear me talk about the whole card. Number 24, Royal Rumble 2007. Undertaker comes in the last few, eliminates Great Khali, who eliminated a whole bunch of people, and has some other good action. Gets down to him and Shawn having a mini match that was basically a prelude to what they would do at Mania 25 and even the following Royal Rumble. Great stuff. They would, eventually Undertaker would eliminate Shawn Michaels to win the Royal Rumble. Big goddamn deal, and a great finish. So yes, while he was only in the Rumble for a few minutes, at least it was a hell of a few minutes, and my God, it was just great to see The Undertaker win the goddamn Royal Rumble. Then we go number 23, versus Rock versus Angle at Vengeance 2007. Or 2002, that is. It would be weird if Rock came back in 2007. This was a big deal. Vengeance 2002 is one of my favorite B pay-per-views of all time. It just, even the weakest match still has some meat to it. It just really had like that cool, fast-paced feel where they were doing the brand split stuff, but they were making the pay-per-views a big deal until they gave up a number of months later. And it was Undertaker defending his undisputed championship against Rock, against Angle. There was a dispute thing with Angle and Undertaker on I believe it was the same, I think it was the same SmackDown where Edge and Hogan beat Billy and Chuck for the tag team championships. And, Hogan would do that at that point, but not when him Bruce the Barber Beefcake at Mania 9 in 1993, and he would want to ruin Bret Hart's coronation, or Yokozuna's coronation. He just fucked up the whole thing. But anyway, Undertaker, Rock, and Angle had one of the best triple threat matches, at least at this point in WWE. Like, I would say to this point, it was one of, if not the best, because huge, great fast pace. They really, they all went all out. Rock was going to be going to Hollywood soon. Angle was still at his peak at this point. And Rock would end up winning to go fight Brock at SummerSlam 2002. And Undertaker didn't look weak here, even though he only had a championship for a couple months. It was still really good, and he had some really good matches, mostly on TV, because the match where he beat Hogan at Judgment Day 2002 wasn't all that good, and the one against Triple H at King of the Ring 2002 wasn't all that good, but Triple H was injured. The whole point is at least the title reign was capped off well. And then we get to number 22 versus Kurt Angle, No Way Out 2006. Angle said on the Broken Skull sessions with Stone Cold that he apparently broke his neck here. Again, Kurt Angle apparently may not love breaking his neck, but seemed to do it quite often. You wouldn't be able to tell. These two had such great chemistry. They would have great matches before and here, and this would kind of be the peak. Kurt Angle was so goddamn great at this point, even with all the injuries that were piling up. Undertaker was still great. And Undertaker had just shown back up, challenging Kurt Angle by making the ring collapse at the end of the Royal Rumble 2006. When they could have just done it on SmackDown and had the Royal Rumble go on last. But that's another debate for another goddamn day. They made up for it with a 20-plus minute classic. Really great stuff. Great to see Angle breaking down the Undertaker. Undertaker getting to show off his submission ability as well. Really, really good clash. Encourage you guys to go check out No Way Out 2006. The pay-per-view isn't all that bad, but the main event in particular is really good. And then we get to number 21 versus Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy, the last ride match, the hearse match, as I called it. Armageddon 2006. Now, Undertaker and Mr. Kennedy did have a bit of a feud. There was Survivor Series 2006 First Blood match where Undertaker lost after an accidental chair shot and then proceeded to absolutely destroy Mr. Kennedy. And this was great. Kennedy looked like he might get the victory, but no, Undertaker was like, I'm going to rise up and no, you will not get Callowayed here. And he beats the shit out of Kennedy and ended up winning the match. Really good tumble by Undertaker, though, taking it off the stage. That was some good stuff. Really, really good match. Very hard hitting. And then we get to number 20 versus Brock Lesnar, Hell in a Cell 2015. This is the lone match from the last 5 years of his career. I'm just going to say that right now because he didn't have all that many that were any good. That weren't like, oh shit, Undertaker should not be wrestling anymore. It wasn't as good as their other Hell in a Cell clash, but it was about as good as it could be with the extra miles that they each had on their body, and it was good stuff, hard hitting. They used the ring. Some parts of the ring to a very violent method, and even for PG, this was pretty goddamn brutal. Undertaker and Brock beat the hell out of each other. Brock naturally was going to have to win, but it was pretty good stuff, and they basically capped off, I guess, what could have been a pretty shit feud, and actually they capped it off, just about as good as they could. And then Brock left for a little bit, and then would come back and do his stuff, and I hope Brock doesn't come back. That's all I'm going to say. This was, however, good and probably the last pretty good Undertaker match that he would have in his career, in my opinion. If you have a different saying, let me know in the comments. So, number 19, that is, versus Shawn Michaels, Royal Rumble 1998, the casket match, where Shawn suffered a back injury, such a horrific back injury that he had to take time off for a few years. And he was so messed up out of his goddamn mind. Fortunately, he got clean. He did. I'm just going to say, Vince McMahon put up with a lot of shit for Shawn Michaels. And I'm glad that Shawn got clean, but it's like, fucking hell. Looking back on that, it's amazing that Shawn's even still alive. Now, him and Undertaker always had great matches. There was, In Your House Ground Zero. It wasn't the best match, but it was hard hitting. There was a cool stage bump. Bad Blood 97. And then this. And then they would, after Shawn retired, they would have their series from 07 at the Rumble to all the way to 2010. They would have off and on and really good stuff. We don't talk about Crown Jewel, Brothers of Destruction versus DX, because it was absolute goddamn ass. Absolute goddamn ass. So their feud, in my opinion, ended in 2010. This was pretty damn good shit. The casket being utilized, Kane eventually being the difference, and then saying Undertaker on fire in the casket. That was pretty goddamn brutal. I guess Fire Marshal wasn't very happy about that, which I don't blame him. But Undertaker and Shawn crafted a really good casket match here, and that's why this one is on the list. Number 18 versus Bret Hart, Royal Rumble 96. Even with the disqualification dodgy finish, because Diesel had to poke his nose in there, because he'd been eliminated from the Royal Rumble, and he was like, well, okay, I'm just going to do this and ruin Undertaker's chances, because Bret Hart had, beaten me for the title, and I wasn't happy about that. They finally turned Diesel heel a year after they should have, but Undertaker would then go on to face Diesel. But this was a really, really good match. It was the second straight Rumble with a dodgy finish where Bret was defending the championship, where he defended against Diesel in 95, and it was a good match, even with the, the interference and stuff. And then you had this. So yes, Undertaker would win, but he wouldn't win the championship. Then he'd interfere and cost Diesel the match at In Your House in February, and then would have that match at Mania 12. That one's not quite on here because as good as it was, and it was good, that one with Diesel, I'm not going to quite put it on there. But this was pretty damn good because Undertaker and Bret always had really good chemistry, even some of the house show matches you see. So now we can move on to number 17 versus Triple H Mania 17. No, not intentional, symmetrical, synergy here. That was a bit weird to say. I still find it funny that the ref took a goddamn nap during this. He got beat up, but it's like he was seemingly asleep forever. They battled all around the Astrodome, including Undertaker and Triple H going up to this, like just crow's nest seemingly, and then Triple H getting choke slammed off of it through some crash pads and stuff, and then Undertaker doing an elbow through onto Triple H there. But it's just still the ref was just totally fucking out. It was basically a goddamn glorified street fight while the referee was a narcoleptic. And then they get back in the ring eventually. It looks like Triple H is going to get the win. He busts open Undertaker's forehead because he was bleeding from before, and then gets the last ride, 1, 2, 3. So yeah, Triple H arrived. He did pretty well here, but Undertaker did beat him because, of course, Undertaker is going to continue his streak. There was no way they would give it to anybody that didn't fucking need it. Oh, wait, they totally fucking did. But anyway, that was a good match, though. Well, actually, I would argue it was better than their Mania 27 match. So we get to number 16 versus Ric Flair, Mania 18. I still say this is one of the most underappreciated Mania matches in history. Rick had arrived, back on the scene in November of 2001. He was just going to be an on-air authority figure, and then he started wrestling. He wrestled Vince. He interfered in a match with Undertaker and Rock on the way out, and then Undertaker got Rick, by beating up his friends and beating up David. For what that's worth, I mean, I think a Leaf could have beaten up David at that point. And then finally Ric Flair challenged him. It was a no DQ, no holds barred match. And while it was tough to watch at times, Rick was at his peak, certainly at this point. Undertaker did a lot for him. There was a big old superplex spot. Undertaker, when he got chopped, that was kind of funny. But Rick did a lot of really good shit here. But Undertaker, even with the last ride botch, because Rick probably wasn't comfortable taking that, or maybe just couldn't get up. He got hit with the tombstone. Undertaker went to 10-0. Also, big pop for the Arn Anderson spinebuster thing. That was really good shit. And now we finish off with the match against Batista at Mania 23. I still argue this should have been way, way, way higher on the card. I'm not saying it should have main evented, but the fact that this wasn't at least third from the top is fucking ridiculous. And that's nothing against anybody else on the goddamn card except Khali and Kane. That match shouldn't have been on the goddamn card at all. It's supposed to be Hogan versus Khali, but imagine how shit that would have been. This was incredible. It was great shit. Batista really doing a lot of good stuff, rising up to the potential that we all knew he could be at, rising up to be the superstar that we all knew he could be. And Undertaker, one of the last great matches that he would truly have. I mean, yes, he would have a series of them until we got past Mania 26, but this was him helping make somebody where even in defeat, Batista did not look weak at all. They did a really good job building this, and this match, again, should have been a lot higher on the card. So that's where I'm going to leave it off. I'm going to continue part 2 here in a little bit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.